The council chamber floated in the silence of space, a massive ring of metal and glass orbiting the neutral world below. Inside, representatives from 47 different species sat in their designated seats, waiting for the session to begin. The air smelled of recycled oxygen and the faint scent of exotic atmospheres from different worlds. Commander Hyunwoo stood against the back wall, his arms crossed over his chest. A long scar ran down the left side of his face, disappearing beneath his uniform collar. He watched the other delegates file in with the practiced patience of a man who had seen too much. Beside him, Ambassador Jiwon adjusted her dark suit and checked her datapad one last time. "They won't listen," Hyunwoo said quietly. "They never do," Jiwon replied without looking up. The chamber's lights dimmed, and the council arbiter called the session to order. Today's agenda had only one major item: the Kryn Empire's proposed expansion route. The Kryn had only joined the galactic community 30 years ago, but they had grown fast. Too fast, in Hyunwoo's opinion. They had absorbed 3 smaller civilizations through economic pressure and military intimidation, and now they wanted more. Admiral Velthar entered the chamber with the confidence of someone who had never truly lost. His forearms moved in graceful arcs as he walked, his crystalline skin catching the light and throwing rainbow patterns across the floor. Behind him, a dozen Kryn officers followed in perfect formation. "Honorable Council," Velthar began, his voice resonating through the translation systems. "The Kryn Empire comes before you today with a proposal that will benefit all of galactic civilization. We have identified a direct route to the resource-rich Omega sector that will cut travel time by 40%. A holographic map appeared above the chamber floor. It showed the current trade routes as blue lines, winding around various territories and danger zones. Then a new line appeared in green, cutting straight through a gray section of the map labeled simply as Sector 447. Hyunwoo felt his jaw tighten. He had known this was coming. Several council members murmured with interest. The trade benefits were obvious. The route passed through what appeared to be empty space unclaimed by any known government. "I must object," Jiwon said, her voice cutting through the murmurs like a blade. She stood and the chamber fell silent. Everyone knew the humans. They were wealthy, they were advanced, and they kept to themselves. When they spoke in council, people listened. Ambassador Jiwon, the arbiter, acknowledged. "You have the floor." "The proposed route passes directly through human space," Jiwon said simply. "Sector 447 and the surrounding regions are closed to unauthorized travel. We cannot permit this route to be established." Velthar's expression shifted to something like amusement. "Ambassador, with all due respect, your people claim vast territories that appear completely empty. Our long-range scans show no colonies, no stations, no infrastructure of any kind. Surely the great human civilization can share a small corridor of unused space." "The space is not unused," Jiwon replied. "It is restricted for security reasons. We have been clear about this for 200 years. "Security reasons," Velthar repeated, and several delegates chuckled. What possible security threat exists in empty space? Unless, he paused dramatically, the humans are hiding something they should not be? Hyunwoo pushed off the wall and walked forward. His boots echoed on the polished floor. He stopped beside Jiwon and looked directly at Velthar. "The sectors are marked as restricted on every official galactic map," Hyunwoo said. His voice was calm, but there was something in it that made several nearby delegates shift uncomfortably. "There are no exceptions. Any vessel entering human space without authorization will be treated as hostile." "Is that a threat, Commander?" Velthar asked. "It's a warning," Hyunwoo replied. "There's a difference." The arbiter raised one appendage for silence. "The Council must consider both positions. Admiral Velthar, why is this specific route so important? Surely alternative paths exist." "They do," Velthar admitted, "but they add weeks to travel time and significant cost. The Kryn Empire has surveyed Sector 447 extensively from the border. It is empty space. We see no reason why outdated territorial claims should prevent galactic progress." More murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Many species saw humanity as overprotective of their borders, claiming more territory than they could possibly need or use. Jiwon's expression remained neutral, but Hyunwoo could see the slight tension in her shoulders. She was calculating, considering how much to reveal. "If I may," a new voice spoke up. Trade Minister Boken walked down from the human delegation seats, his round face showing what appeared to be friendly concern. Perhaps we could arrange a compromise? Limited passage permits, pre-approved vessels with human escorts? No, Ji-won and Hyunwoo said simultaneously. Boken spread his hands apologetically to the council. I tried. The arbiter looked at the assembly. Does any member wish to speak in support of the human position? Silence filled the chamber. Not because the other species disliked humanity, but because the logic seemed clear. The space appeared empty. The humans were being unreasonable. Very well, the arbiter said. I call for a vote. All in favor of recognizing the Kryn Empire's right to establish the proposed route through unclaimed space? 39 hands, claws, and appendages rose. Opposed? Only the human delegation remained standing in opposition. The motion passes, the arbiter declared. Admiral Velthar, you may proceed with your expedition. However, the arbiter added, looking at the humans, we strongly encourage you to hail any human vessels you encounter and attempt peaceful communication first. Velthar bowed deeply. All four arms spread wide in victory. The Kryn Empire thanks this council for its wisdom. We will, of course, respect all safety protocols. Ji-won gathered her datapad and turned to leave. Hyunwoo followed her, and Bokun fell in step beside them. As they reached the exit, Ji-won stopped and turned back to face Velthar across the chamber. Admiral, she called out, her voice carrying clearly. Our maps end where your understanding begins. Turn back or don't. But know that we warned you. The three humans left the chamber without waiting for a response. In the corridor outside, Bokun let out a long breath. Well, that went exactly as expected. How long? Hyunwoo asked. Intelligence says they're launching the expedition in 6 days, Ji-won replied. 47 ships. They're calling it the Grand Fleet. 47, Bokun repeated softly. That's a lot of funerals. That's their choice, Ji-won said, but her voice carried a note of genuine sadness. We warned them. We've been warning everyone for 200 years. They walked through the station in silence, past delegates from a dozen different worlds who nodded politely or looked away awkwardly. Everyone had heard about the vote. Most thought the humans were simply being territorial. Back in their private shuttle, Hyunwoo stood at the viewport and watched the council station shrink in the distance. Somewhere out there, beyond the safe, mapped regions of space, something ancient and hungry waited in the dark. And in 6 days, 47 Kryn ships were going to sail straight toward it. Should we send advance warning to Sector Command? He asked. Ji-won was already typing on her console. Already done. They're moving the Danby into position. Just the Danby? For now. Let's see if one frigate and one more warning will be enough. She paused, her fingers hovering over the keys. It won't be. No, Hyunwoo agreed. It won't be. The shuttle jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving the council station and its ignorant optimism far behind. The Kryn Grand Fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Sector 447, with all the ceremony befitting a historic moment. 47 ships hung in the blackness of space, their hulls gleaming with fresh paint and pride. The largest vessels were the warships, bristling with weapons that had conquered 3 civilizations. Behind them came the colony ships filled with thousands of Kryn families ready to settle new worlds. At the rear, the massive mining barges waited to extract resources from the untapped riches ahead. Admiral Velthar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Glorious Victory, and smiled with all 4 arms clasped behind his back. His crystalline skin reflected the light from the view screens, casting patterns across the walls. Begin recording, he ordered. This moment must be preserved for history. The communications officer activated the recording systems, and Velthar turned to face the main camera. Today, the Kryn Empire takes its rightful place among the great explorers of the galaxy. We pass through gates that others feared to open, and we will bring prosperity to all who follow. Let this be remembered as the day we proved that courage matters more than caution. It was a good speech. He had practiced it many times. In a small cabin 3 decks below, Captain Mireille sat at her desk and listened to the Admiral's words through the ship's intercom. She was the human observer, assigned to the fleet by the Council as a formality. Her official role was to provide technical assistance and diplomatic liaison services. Her actual role was much simpler: witness. Mireille pulled up her personal console and began a new log entry. Day 1. The fleet has entered Sector 447. Admiral Velthar appears confident. The crew is excited. None of them understand what's about to happen. I tried to tell them. They wouldn't listen. They never listen. She saved the entry and encrypted it. Then she checked the small emergency beacon hidden in her quarters. It was active, transmitting on a frequency that only human vessels could detect. Everything was ready. On the bridge, Science Officer Dae Jung was reviewing the initial scans. He was young for his position, chosen for his skill with sensor arrays. His 6 eyes moved independently as he examined multiple data streams at once. "Admiral," he said hesitantly, "I'm detecting some unusual readings." "What kind of readings?" Velthar asked without much interest. "Quantum fluctuations, sir. They're faint, but they don't match any natural phenomena in our database. Space is full of unusual readings, Dae Jung. That's why we explore it. Is there any immediate danger?" Dae Jung checked his screens again. The fluctuations were there, definitely there, but they didn't seem to be doing anything. "No immediate danger, sir." "Then continue monitoring and stop worrying. We have human observers to warn us if anything truly dangerous appears, don't we?" Velthar looked around the bridge and several officers laughed. The fleet moved forward at a steady pace, engines burning bright against the darkness. According to their charts, they would cross through Sector 447 in 12 days. After that, they would reach the Omega Sector and begin establishing their new territory. The first day passed without incident. The second day as well. By the third day, some of the crew had started to relax. Maybe the humans had been bluffing after all. Maybe this sector really was just empty space. Mirai spent most of her time in her cabin, watching the sensor feeds on her private console. She could see things the Kryn sensors couldn't detect, shadows that moved between the stars, energy signatures that appeared and vanished too quickly for normal instruments to register. The fleet was being watched. It had been watched since the moment it entered human space. On the 4th day, everything changed. "Contact," the sensor officer shouted. "Single vessel bearing 270, range 50,000 kilometers. The bridge erupted into activity. Velthar moved to the command chair and pulled up the tactical display. There, clear as daylight on the screen, was a single ship. It was small, barely a fifth the size of the Glorious Victory. The identification came through a moment later. HSS Danby, Human Federation frigate. "Finally," Velthar said. "Open a channel." The view screen flickered and a human face appeared. He was middle-aged, with tired eyes and a neutral expression. He wore a simple gray uniform with minimal decoration. "This is Captain Taiyang of the Human Federation ship Danby. You are in violation of restricted space. You have 6 hours to reverse course and exit Sector 447. This is your final warning." Velthar stood and approached the screen. "Captain, I am Admiral Velthar of the Kryn Imperial Fleet. We have been authorized by the Galactic Council to use this route. We will not be turning back." "The Galactic Council has no authority in human space," Taiyang replied. His voice remained calm, almost bored. 6 hours. "The countdown has begun. Captain, surely we can discuss this like civilized beings. We mean no harm to humanity. We simply wish to pass through." 6 hours, Taiyang repeated. Danby out. The screen went dark. Fleet Coordinator Subin, a nervous officer who handled logistics, spoke up from her station. "Admiral, should we prepare for combat?" "Against one small frigate?" Velthar laughed. "No, we'll continue on our course. If they want to stop us, let them try." "Sir, perhaps we should consider," Subin began. "Enough," Velthar cut her off. "I will not be intimidated by fear tactics. Weapons officer, lock onto that frigate. If it makes any hostile move, destroy it." "Yes, sir." "Locking weapons now." The targeting systems activated and red brackets appeared around the Danby on the tactical display. But before the weapons could finish locking on, the human ship simply vanished. "Where did it go?" Velthar demanded. "I don't know, sir," the sensor officer said, frantically checking his instruments. "It just disappeared. No jump signature, no energy spike, nothing. It's just gone." Dae Jung was staring at his screens with growing concern. "Admiral, those quantum fluctuations I mentioned earlier. They're getting stronger, much stronger. And they're all around us now." "What does that mean?" Velthar asked. "I don't know, sir. I've never seen anything like this before." Subin pulled up the fleet-wide sensor network. "Admiral, other ships are reporting similar readings. Some are also reporting brief contacts on their scopes, ships appearing and disappearing in microseconds." A cold feeling settled in Velthar's chest. "Send a message to all vessels. Maintain formation and continue on course. Stay alert." In her cabin, Mirai heard the Admiral's order over the intercom. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Then she activated her emergency beacon to full power and locked her cabin door from the inside. She pulled out a small sidearm from her personal locker and set it on the desk in front of her, just in case. The hours ticked by slowly. The Kryn fleet moved through space like a school of fish swimming into deeper and deeper water, unaware of what lurked below. Sensors reported contacts every few minutes now. Ships that appeared at the edge of detection range and vanished before anyone could get a clear reading. Sometimes they were ahead of the fleet, sometimes behind. Sometimes on all sides at once. Dae-jung had stopped trying to explain the readings. They made no sense according to any physics he understood. When the 6-hour deadline passed, nothing happened immediately. Velthar began to think that maybe the humans had been bluffing after all. Then the first ship disappeared. It was a mining barge at the rear of the formation. One moment it was there on all the sensors, transmitting its routine status reports. The next moment it was simply gone. "Get me a status report on the barge Endless Bounty," Velthar ordered. "No response, sir," Communications replied. "It's not transmitting at all. Sensors?" "Nothing, sir." "It's like it was never there." "That's impossible. Send a scout ship to investigate its last known position." A small Kryn scout ship broke formation and accelerated toward where the mining barge had been. It took 20 minutes to reach the location. What it found made the scout captain's voice shake as he reported back. "Admiral, there's debris here." "Lots of it. The barge has been cut apart, sir. Clean cuts like it was sliced with precision tools. But there's no sign of the crew. No bodies, no escape pods, nothing." Velthar felt that cold feeling again, stronger this time. Return to formation immediately. But the scout ship never made it back. Halfway to the fleet it vanished too. And then all around them, ships began to appear on sensors. Not Kryn ships. Human ships. Dozens of them. The panic spread through the Kryn fleet like fire through dry grass. Ships that had been sailing in perfect formation now scattered, their captains making desperate decisions without coordination. Some tried to flee back the way they had come, others clustered together for protection. A few brave warships formed a defensive line and prepared to fight whatever was coming. Admiral Velthar stood on his bridge and watched his grand fleet fall apart in real time. The tactical display showed dozens of human contacts now, appearing and disappearing around the Kryn vessels like ghosts. Every time the Kryn sensors locked onto one, it vanished before weapons could fire. "All ships maintain formation," Velthar ordered, but his voice lacked the confidence it had carried just hours before. "Do not break ranks!" It was too late. The formation was already broken. Fleet Coordinator Subin was tracking what remained of their vessels on her console. Her hands shook as she worked. "Admiral, we've lost contact with 7 more ships. 3 colony vessels, 2 warships, and 2 mining barges. That's 8 ships total in the last hour." "How?" Velthar demanded. "How are they doing this?" "Where are they coming from?" Science Officer Dae-jung had given up trying to make sense of the sensor readings. "Sir, the quantum fluctuations suggest some kind of advanced stealth technology, but the power requirements would be enormous. And the way they're moving, appearing in multiple locations simultaneously, it's like they're bending space itself. Can we fight them?" "I don't know how, sir. We can't target what we can't see." On the other side of the sector, Captain Jinha sat in the command chair of the HSS Seongmin, a human dreadnought that made the Kryn flagship look like a toy. She watched the tactical display with the calm expression of someone who had done this before. Around her ship, dozens of smaller human vessels moved in perfect coordination, their stealth systems making them invisible to Kryn sensors. "Status?" Jinha asked. "Mining barges are secure," her tactical officer reported. "All Kryn crew members have been evacuated and are in holding cells. The barges themselves have been disabled and are drifting." "Good. Continue with the support vessels. Avoid casualties if possible, but protect our people first." "Yes, ma'am." The human ships moved like wolves among sheep. They appeared next to Kryn vessels, disabled their weapons and engines with surgical precision, evacuated the crews, and vanished again before anyone could respond. It was not a battle. It was a harvest. Back on the glorious Victory, young Ensign Hana sat at her navigation station and tried not to cry. She had joined the fleet because she believed in the Kryn Empire's mission. She had wanted to be part of something great, something historic. Now she just wanted to go home. "Ensign," Velthar barked at her, "plot a course out of this sector. Best speed." Hana's fingers flew across her controls. Then they stopped. She tried again, entering different calculations. The result was the same. Sir, I can't. What do you mean you can't? The jump drive won't activate. It's like something is interfering with the formation of the faster-than-light field, and our standard engines, they're working, but the navigation system keeps redirecting us back toward the center of the sector, no matter what course I plot. Daijung looked up from his station. She's right, sir. I'm detecting a massive interference field throughout this entire region. It's disrupting our navigation systems and blocking our jump drives. We're trapped. Those words hung in the air like a death sentence. Trapped. They were trapped in human space with an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't fight, and couldn't escape from. Another ship vanished from the tactical display. Then another. The fleet that had entered Sector 447 with 47 ships now had only 19 vessels still under their own control. Incoming transmission, the communications officer said. It's from a human ship. Put it on screen, Velthar ordered. Maybe he could negotiate. Maybe there was still a way out of this. The face that appeared was not Captain Taiyang this time. It was a woman, older, with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much death. She wore a uniform with more decorations than Velthar had ever seen on any human before. Admiral Velthar, she said, I am Captain Jinha of the Human Federation ship Seongmin. You and your fleet are hereby ordered to power down all weapons and engines and prepare to be boarded. If you comply, your crews will not be harmed. If you resist, you will be destroyed. You have 5 minutes to decide. Velthar felt all 4 of his arms trembling with rage and fear. You have no right. The Galactic Council authorized this route. The Galactic Council has no authority in human space, Jinha replied, echoing the words of Captain Taiyang. You were warned. Multiple times. You chose to ignore those warnings. Now you face the consequences. 4 minutes. I am an admiral of the Kryn Empire. I command 47 ships and thousands of soldiers. You cannot simply... You command 19 ships, Jinha interrupted. The rest are already in our custody. Their crews are safe and unharmed. Yours can be too. 3 minutes. Subin leaned close to Velthar and whispered urgently, Sir, we should surrender. We can't win this. We can't even fight this. No, Velthar said. No. The Kryn Empire does not surrender to threats and intimidation. Weapons officer, charge all weapons systems. Target that human ship when it appears. Sir, we don't know where it is, the weapons officer said. Then fire at where the transmission is coming from. On Jinha's ship, the tactical officer raised an eyebrow. They're charging weapons, ma'am. Of course they are, Jinha sighed. Some people only learn through pain. Activate defense systems and prepare hunter drones. Set weapons to disable only. Yes, ma'am. On the glorious Victory, Velthar watched his weapons officer work frantically to lock onto the human transmission source. The forward guns of the massive warship began to glow with gathered energy. Around the bridge, officers held their breath, waiting for the moment of firing. Target locked, the weapons officer announced. Firing now. 24 massive plasma missiles launched from the glorious Victory, streaking through space toward where the human transmission had originated. They were the pride of Kryn weapons technology, each one capable of destroying a city. They traveled 3 kilometers before they simply ceased to exist. Small human defense drones, each no bigger than a person's hand, intercepted every single missile and neutralized them with precision energy bursts. The missiles didn't explode. They just stopped being missiles and became expanding clouds of harmless particles. On his bridge, Velthar stared at the view screen in disbelief. That's impossible. 2 minutes, Jinha's voice said over the communication channel. Then the human ships appeared. Not on sensors. In reality, all around the Kryn fleet, dozens of human vessels decloaked simultaneously, their stealth systems powering down to reveal their true positions. They had been there the entire time, close enough to touch, invisible and waiting. The HSS Seongmin materialized directly ahead of the glorious Victory, less than a kilometer away. It was massive, easily 3 times the size of Velthar's flagship. Its hull dark and studded with weapons that looked like nothing the Kryn had ever seen. Ensign Hana made a small sound of fear. 1 minute, Jinha said. Velthar looked at his weapons officer. Fire everything. All weapons now. The officer hesitated, looked at the overwhelming force surrounding them, then pressed the firing controls. Every weapon on the glorious Victory fired at once. Plasma cannons, missile pods, energy beams, kinetic rounds. It was enough firepower to level a planet. It all streaked toward the human dreadnought, a wave of destruction that should have obliterated anything in its path. The Xiongmin didn't move. It didn't even activate any visible shields. Small points of light appeared in the space between the two ships, thousands of them, like stars being born. They were defense drones so small that individual Kryn sensors couldn't even detect them. They intercepted every single weapon, every single round, every single particle of energy. Nothing reached the Xiongmin. Not even close. "Time's up," Jinha said. From every human ship, small, dark shapes launched into space. They moved faster than anything the Kryn had ever built, darting through the void like hunting birds. They attached themselves to the hulls of Kryn vessels, and suddenly engines stopped working. Weapons went offline. Life support remained active, but every other system simply shut down. The entire Kryn fleet went dark in less than 30 seconds. On the bridge of the glorious victory, emergency lights kicked in, casting everything in a dim red glow. Officers sat at dead consoles staring at blank screens. Velthar sank into his command chair. All four of his arms hung limply at his sides. "Open a channel," he said quietly. "Communications are down, sir," the officer replied. A new voice spoke from the speakers, coming through some system the humans controlled. "Admiral Velthar, you and your crew will now be transferred to human custody. You will not be harmed. Please gather in your ship's main assembly areas and wait for boarding parties." Subin looked at Velthar. "Sir?" The admiral said nothing. What was there to say? They had lost. They had lost so completely that it felt like they had never even been in a fight. And throughout the entire encounter, the human dreadnought had never moved, never needed to maneuver, never expended more energy than necessary to neutralize threats. The human station appeared before them like a city floating in space. It was enormous, larger than any structure the Kryn had ever built, a massive ring of metal and light spinning slowly against the backdrop of distant stars. This was Outpost, Vigilance, one of hundreds of human military installations scattered throughout Sector 447. Admiral Velthar and 4,000 surviving Kryn crew members sat in a holding area that looked more like a comfortable waiting room than a prison. There were chairs, tables, even areas designated for rest. Human guards stood at the exits, armed but not aggressive. Medical personnel moved among the Kryn, treating injuries and offering food and water. It was all very civilized, which somehow made it worse. Velthar sat alone in a corner, all four of his arms wrapped around himself. He had stopped speaking 12 hours ago, after the last of his ships had been towed into human custody. Some of the other Kryn talked quietly among themselves. Others, like young Ensign Hana, simply stared at the walls with empty eyes. Captain Mireille walked through the holding area with a human medical officer, checking on the Kryn prisoners. She stopped beside Velthar and sat down next to him without asking permission. "Admiral," she said gently. He didn't respond. "I'm sorry this happened," Mireille continued. "I tried to warn you. We all tried." "You're not sorry," Velthar said, his voice hollow. "You knew this would happen. You watched it happen. You could have stopped it before it began." "No," Mireille said. "Only you could have stopped it. By listening, by turning back. We gave you every chance." Before Velthar could respond, the lights in the holding area dimmed slightly, and a large holographic display appeared in the center of the room. A human figure materialized, an elderly man in a dark uniform covered with medals and insignia that indicated very high rank. "Attention, please," the hologram said. The voice was kind but firm, the voice of a grandfather who sometimes had to tell hard truths. "I am Fleet Admiral Youngsu of the Human Federation Defense Command. I understand you have many questions about what happened to you and why. You deserve answers. What you are about to see is classified at the highest levels of human government. Very few people outside our species have ever witnessed this information. We are sharing it with you now not as a privilege, but as a necessity." The hologram changed, and suddenly they were looking at a different human woman. She appeared middle-aged, with kind eyes and the comfortable appearance of a teacher. She stood in what looked like a lecture hall. "My name is Yunji," she said. "I am a historian and xenobiologist specializing in humanity's first contact events. What I'm about to tell you is the true history of human space exploration, a history we have kept secret from the Galactic Council for 200 years. The display changed again, showing a star map. The Kryn recognized it as the galactic arm where humanity had first emerged as a spacefaring species. 217 years ago, Yunji continued, humanity reached beyond the mapped regions of the galaxy. We sent exploration vessels to investigate the space beyond the galactic rim, hoping to find new worlds and new resources. What we found instead was something no one could have imagined. The star map changed, zooming out to show the vast empty space beyond the edge of the galaxy. But it wasn't empty in the display. Dark shapes moved there, things that hurt to look at, things that seemed to absorb light and meaning. We call them the Void Swarm, Yunji said, and her voice carried a weight of old fear. They are not alive in any way we understand life. They are not machines in any way we understand technology. They exist outside the normal rules of physics and biology. They consume. That is all they do. They consume matter, energy, time, space itself. Everything they touch becomes part of them, and what they touch ceases to exist in any meaningful way. The display showed a human colony world. It looked peaceful, green and blue, with cities visible from orbit. Then the dark shapes descended, and the planet simply stopped being a planet. It became something else, something twisted and wrong. Several Kryn gasped. Ensign Hana covered her mouth with both hands. First contact occurred on the colony world of New Sol, Yunji continued. Population, 4 million. The swarm reached the planet's surface in the early morning. By evening, there was no planet. Not destroyed, not dead, just gone. Replaced by a space where our sensors couldn't make sense of what they were detecting. The display changed to show human warships fighting against the dark shapes. The battles looked desperate, chaotic. Human ships fired weapons that seemed to work, but only barely. For every dark shape they destroyed, 3 more appeared. We lost 12 colony worlds in the first 72 hours, Yunji said. 50 million people. Our military forces were completely unprepared. We didn't understand what we were fighting or how to fight it. But we learned quickly, because we had no choice. If we didn't learn, humanity would cease to exist. Admiral Velthar found himself leaning forward, watching intently despite his earlier despair. This was impossible. This had to be a lie. Some kind of propaganda to justify human military buildup. But something in the historian's voice in the raw footage being shown felt terribly real. The war lasted 50 years, Yunji continued. 50 years of desperate fighting, of developing new weapons and technologies, of sacrifices that most of you cannot imagine. We threw everything we had at the swarm, every resource, every brilliant mind, every ship we could build. Entire generations grew up knowing nothing but war, and slowly, meter by meter, we pushed them back. The display showed the construction of massive installations in space, weapon platforms the size of cities, shields that bent reality itself, sensor arrays that could detect quantum fluctuations across light years. We won, Yunji said. Eventually we won. We pushed the swarm back beyond the galactic rim and established a defensive perimeter. But the swarm is still there, always probing, always testing, always looking for weaknesses. They never stop. They never tire. They never give up. The display changed to show Sector 447 and the surrounding regions. But now, it didn't look empty. It was filled with human installations, weapon platforms, patrol routes, defense grids. Every cubic kilometer of space was monitored, protected, weaponized. This is why human space appears empty on galactic maps, Yunji explained. This is why we close our borders to unauthorized travel. This is why we maintain what appears to be an absurdly large military force. Every ship you encountered, every weapon that disabled your vessels, every defense system that protected us, was built and maintained for one purpose: to hold the line against the swarm. She paused and her expression became grave. And now you understand our problem. If we had told the Galactic Council about the swarm, one of 2 things would have happened. Either they would have panicked and destabilized galactic civilization, or they would have wanted to help fight. And if they helped fight, If they brought their ships and their weapons and their people into the war zone, they would have died. All of them. Because you are not ready to fight the swarm. None of you are. The display showed a comparison. A standard. Galactic warship appeared next to the weakest swarm entity ever recorded. The swarm entity consumed the warship in seconds. So we made a choice, Yunji said. We decided to bear this burden alone. We fortified our borders, we militarized our entire civilization, and we stood watch. For 200 years we have held the line. We have lost ships. We have lost people. Right now, as you watch this, there are 500,000 human military personnel in this sector alone, maintaining the defenses, repairing the systems, watching for swarm incursions. The display returned to show Yunji in her lecture hall. Every year, approximately 200,000 humans die maintaining the perimeter. Not in glorious battles, mostly in accidents, equipment failures, exposure to swarm residue, or simple exhaustion. We rotate personnel constantly, but the truth is that serving on the perimeter ages you faster than living anywhere else. The constant vigilance, the stress, the exposure to weapons and technologies that barely make sense even to us. It takes a toll. She looked directly at the camera, and through it, at every Kryn watching. So when you entered our space, when you ignored our warnings and brought your ships and your families and your dreams into the war zone, you forced us to stop you, not because we hate you, not because we wanted to hurt you, but because if we let you through, you would have died. All of you. And worse, you might have drawn the swarm's attention to parts of the galaxy that are not prepared to face them. The hologram of Fleet Admiral Youngsu reappeared. Your people will be returned safely to Kryn space, he said. Your ships will be repaired and returned as well. But you will not be allowed to pass through human territory again, not now, not ever. Not until the day comes when we can defeat the swarm permanently, or when your civilizations are ready to stand beside us in this fight. He paused, and for just a moment, the exhaustion showed on his face. We know you think we're paranoid, territorial, aggressive, and maybe we are. But we're also the reason you're still alive. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened exactly 1 month after the Kryn incident. The chamber was more crowded than usual, with representatives from every member species present. News of what had happened to the Grand Fleet had spread quickly through galactic civilization, and everyone wanted answers. Ambassador Jiwan stood at the human delegation podium, wearing the same dark suit she had worn during the last session. Beside her, Commander Hyunwoo stood with his arms crossed, his scarred face impassive. Behind them, a team of human specialists waited with data files and equipment. At the center of the chamber, Admiral Velthar sat in a witness chair. He looked different than he had a month ago. His crystalline skin seemed duller, and he held himself with the bearing of someone who had seen behind the curtain of reality and found something terrible there. Council Arbiter Daxrian, a tall being covered in golden fur, called the session to order. This council convenes to address the incident in Sector 447 involving the Kryn Imperial Fleet and Human Defense Forces. Admiral Velthar, please describe in your own words what occurred. Velthar stood slowly. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but clear. We were warned, he began. Multiple times we were warned. The humans told us their space was restricted. They told us not to enter. We thought we knew better. We thought they were bluffing or hoarding resources or afraid of competition. We were wrong about everything. He described the journey into human space, the warnings they had ignored, the way their ships had been systematically disabled and captured, the overwhelming technology the humans had displayed, and finally the revelation about the Void Swarm. When he finished, the chamber was silent. This swarm, Daxarian said carefully, do you believe the humans were telling the truth about it? I don't know, Velthar admitted. I didn't see the swarm myself, but I saw the fear in their eyes when they spoke about it. I saw the defenses they've built. I saw technology that should not exist being used casually, routinely, because they need it just to survive. Either they're telling the truth, or they've constructed the most elaborate lie in galactic history for no apparent reason. The Galactic Council requires more than testimony, another delegate said. We need proof, Jiwan stepped forward. We anticipated that request. We have brought evidence. She gestured, and holographic displays appeared throughout the chamber. They showed footage of swarm encounters, sensor logs, weapon test data, casualty reports. 200 years of documentation, carefully compiled and edited to remove the most classified information, while still proving the central truth. Something terrible existed beyond the galactic rim, and humanity had been fighting it alone. The council members studied the evidence in silence. Some looked skeptical. Others looked horrified. A few looked angry that they had been kept in the dark for so long. "Why didn't you tell us?" Daxrian demanded. 200 years and you said nothing? "Because you're not ready," Hyunwoo said bluntly. "And telling you would have caused more harm than good. That was not your decision to make." "It absolutely was," Hyunwoo replied, his voice hard. "You want proof? Fine, come with us. Come see the perimeter. Come see what we've been protecting you from." The Arbiter's golden fur bristled with indignation. "Are you seriously suggesting—" "Yes," Jiwon interrupted. "We're offering to show you. A small delegation. Strictly controlled conditions. You want to understand why we closed our borders? Come and see." The chamber erupted into arguments. Some council members demanded proof. Others insisted it was too dangerous. A few accused humanity of warmongering and deception. The debate raged for hours. Finally, Daxrian raised a hand for silence. "Very well. I will lead a delegation myself. If the humans are willing to show us this threat, we should be willing to look." 3 days later, a small council delegation stood on the observation deck of the HSS Seongmin. Captain Jinha had volunteered her ship for the demonstration. They were at the very edge of Sector 447, as close to the perimeter as civilians were allowed to approach. Daxrian stood at the front window, looking out at what appeared to be empty space. Beside him, several other council members waited nervously. Human technicians worked at nearby consoles, monitoring dozens of sensor feeds. "What exactly are we waiting for?" Daxrian asked. "For them to probe the defenses," Jinha replied. "They do it every few days. Testing, always testing, looking for weaknesses." As if summoned by her words, alarms began to sound throughout the ship. Not emergency alarms, but a steady, rhythmic warning that all the humans seemed to recognize instantly. "Incoming," a tactical officer announced. "Swarm probe, Vector 732, range 4 million kilometers and closing." "Show them," Jinha ordered. The view screen changed to show enhanced sensor data. There, moving through space in ways that hurt to watch, came something dark. It wasn't really visible to the naked eye, but the sensors could track it, and what they showed made no sense. The thing seemed to exist in multiple places at once, folding space around itself, leaving trails of distorted reality in its wake. "What is that?" Daxrian whispered. "That's a scout," Jinha said. "One of the smallest swarm entities we've ever detected. It's looking for a way through our defenses." The thing moved closer, accelerating in ways that violated physics. 2 million kilometers. 1 million. Defense grid activating, the tactical officer reported. In the space between the Seongmin and the approaching entity, reality seemed to ripple. Weapon platforms that had been invisible suddenly revealed themselves, thousands of them, forming a wall of technology across light years of space. They opened fire simultaneously. The weapons looked like nothing the council delegates had ever seen. Beams that appeared to erase sections of space, missiles that bent around dimensions, energy fields that simply negated the existence of whatever they touched. The combined firepower was staggering, more than the entire Kryn fleet had possessed. The swarm scout took it all. It absorbed the weapons fire, twisted through the defensive fields, and kept coming. It was damaged, pieces of it breaking away into nothing, but it didn't stop. More weapons activated, deeper, more powerful systems that made the first wave look like children's toys. Reality itself seemed to scream as they fired. Finally, the scout entity collapsed, its existence simply terminating. The space where it had been returned to normal, though sensors still showed strange readings that would take hours to dissipate. In the observation deck, several council members were openly trembling. One had collapsed into a chair. Daxrian stood frozen, his golden fur standing on end. "That was a scout," Jinha repeated quietly. "One of the smallest entities. During the war, we faced swarms of thousands of them at once, along with larger entities that could consume entire fleets. This was nothing. This was a normal Tuesday for us." She turned to face the delegation. "Every 3 days on average, something probes our defenses. Most of the time, it's small scouts like this one. Once or twice a year, something larger tries to break through. We stop them. We always stop them. But it takes constant vigilance, constant maintenance, constant sacrifice. And you want to know the worst part? She gestured to a nearby console where an officer pulled up personnel files. Lieutenant Nari was killed yesterday in this sector, age 26. Her fighter was caught in a swarm residue field during a patrol. The field destabilized and her ship was destroyed before rescue could reach her. She's the third death this week. We've lost 1,700 personnel this month. It's a slow month. Captain Minseok entered the observation deck carrying a sealed containment unit. Inside, something moved. Something dark and wrong that made the delegate step back instinctively. "This is a swarm sample," Minseok said. "Captured at great cost, kept in containment that requires power equal to a small city just to maintain. If this container fails, the sample will consume this entire ship in approximately 7 minutes. We study them, trying to understand them, trying to find better ways to fight them. We've made progress. 200 years ago, it would have consumed the ship in 4 minutes." He set the container down carefully, and every delegate watched it like they would watch a bomb. "This is what we face," Minseok continued. "This is what we've been protecting you from. Not because we're heroes, not because we want gratitude, but because someone has to and we're the only ones positioned to do it." The delegation returned to the council chamber 2 days later. They looked older, haunted by what they had witnessed. Daxrian took his position at the arbiter's podium and called the session to order. "This council has reviewed the evidence presented by the human delegation," he announced. His voice was steady, but his hands shook slightly. "We have witnessed firsthand the threat that exists beyond our borders, and we have seen the defense systems that humanity has built to protect all of us from that threat." He paused, looking around the chamber. "I move that we formally recognize all human-claimed territories as restricted zones, closed to unauthorized travel for security reasons. Furthermore, I move that we commend humanity for their 2 centuries of selfless service to galactic civilization, protecting us from a threat we never knew existed." The vote was unanimous. New galactic maps were issued the following week. Where human space had previously been marked simply as restricted, the new maps included a notation in every standard galactic language.